volunteer program to advocate for foster children and ensure their interests are represented. Last week, CASA, the organization, was among some of the programs seeing its federal grants cut through the Department of Justice.
And that has the state and local CASA program assessing the impact. Sean Logging takes a look at what this could mean here in Kansas. Sean?
Like Rachel, the National CASA Organization reports that 3 of its grants through the DOJ were among 360 that were cut last week by the agency. The AP reports that the hundreds of grants total more than $800 million. A voice. That is what volunteers through court-appointed special advocate or CASA programs provide.
Appointed by judges to advocate for children in foster care who have experienced abuse or neglect. They get to know the child, talk with family members, foster parents, teachers, doctors, really anyone involved in the child's life.
But these programs are feeling a bit speechless after the National CASA Organization had 3 grants cut by the DOJ.
The complete loss, and as sudden as it occurred, has been very surprising.
Kim Gerstenkorn with CASA of Sedgwick County says the National CASA Organization provides support and the training that volunteers take to become advocates. Kim says while this doesn't have an immediate impact in Sedgwick County, funding from these grants helps support local programs.
CASA of Sedgwick County was working on applying for the 2026 funding cycle. So we had a recent local funding loss, and we're hoping to make up with that through grants from National CASA. So there's just a lot of unknown.
Kansas CASA Association says 2 of the 20 local programs in the state are affected, which received funding to expand services in Northeast Kansas and could impact about 175 children.
Currently looking for ways to replace those dollars because the need is so great. Every child deserves someone in their corner.
These programs say part of the challenge is understanding why these cuts were made. With the justification provided,
it does not effectuate the administration's current focuses, which includes protection of American children, which is exactly what CASA programs are trying to do.
Last year in Kansas, CASA served more than 1,300 children, an increase from the year before. Many of the programs in the state are sustained by local funding and donations, along with the work of volunteers. The National CASA Organization says that it is appealing the decision to end the grants.
Sean, thank you. New